All right, let's talk about what tax sale properties to avoid in this video. My name is Casey Dimon. I'm the founder of the Tax Sale Academy. I was doing some research this morning. I actually came across all the properties I'm about to show you. So when you go to a tax sale, you're going to have the opportunity to buy all sorts of different properties. Now, these properties are available for purchase simply because the owner of that property failed to pay their taxes on time. Now, there are countless reasons that the owner might have not paid their taxes on time. A lot of them do not relate to the property at all, like perhaps the person is deceased. But a lot of them do relate to the property. So in other words, they did not feel as if their investment in that tax bill was worth the value of owning that property. So when you compare a tax sale list to a random list of standard real estate on the open market, the properties that are on that tax sale list are going to have a significantly higher likelihood of having some sort of major issue. Now, buying something that you should not have purchased or buying something as just a mistake, of course, it costs you time, money, but it also costs you other issues that most people are not even aware of. You probably think to yourself, well, I spent $500 on that property or $1,000 on that property. I'll just stop paying the taxes on the property. The headache will go away. I'll lose it when they foreclose because I did not pay the taxes on that property in a couple of years. Sure, you lost your initial investment, but in many areas, if you find yourself on the wrong side of a tax foreclosure, you can be prohibited from holding an interest in a tax foreclosed purchase. Now, what that means is essentially, as a tax sale investor, you are out of business, at least in that area. Now, it's very important here to note that some of the examples we're about to go over actually require you to learn what you are doing. They might not specifically say unbuildable or useless or valueless. In fact, some are probably going to be classified as residential building site, residential vacant lot, which to the uninformed investor implies they're usable, when in reality, they might be classified one way, but the actual use is entirely different. Anyhow, let's go ahead and discuss a few of these properties. I'm going to work to put some photos on the screen as well to provide some examples, and these are all tax sale properties available for purchase right now. The first one I want to talk about are strips of land. Now, oftentimes, these strips of land were left over after nearby properties were developed and are the result of mistakes typically within that development. While they will be cheap, and while they will attract a lot of attention because they are cheap, especially from brand new investors, they're worthless in value and most practical uses. Let's go ahead and look at a few photos. Here's a property right here. What you see is essentially about a 1-foot strip between two parcels of land. So they divided this area up and they just happen to have this 1-foot strip of land left over. The next one here, this is almost like a little miniature flag lot. It's about 1 foot wide and it goes back, and when it really opens up, it is 9 feet wide. Again, this was a leftover piece of property that just somehow made its way onto the tax rolls and is not worth a whole lot of money. The next one here, this is a little piece of land that's essentially between a few houses. They all kind of back up to this property. So not only is it landlocked, it's also completely useless because it's a little strip of land. Then the next one here, I actually did a case study on this. You can actually search on my channel the word villa and the case study will pop up. This was a piece of land that a gentleman paid a lot of money for because he thought he was getting the condo in the back when he actually got that little 2 or 3 foot wide strip of grass. So what you need to understand is that these properties exist, and they're actually very, very common on a tax sale list. And you can easily identify these properties if you know how to learn legal descriptions, which is something that we teach inside the academy. And then, of course, outside of that, there's all sorts of other ways that you can study and analyze these properties and determine that they're worthless strips of land. So again, complete waste of time. The next one I want to discuss with you today are a lot of properties that came across today as well, and these are going to be the landlocked properties. These are properties that do not front a legal road. So in other words, the only way to get to them is to drive across somebody else's private property, which of course is going to be illegal without their permission or without some sort of written and recorded easement. Most properties that are landlocked that end up at tax sales are not going to have any sort of easement, so keep that in mind. You can obviously attempt to negotiate some sort of easement with the adjoining property owners, but when it comes to tax sale investing and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of moving pieces, and oftentimes in order to do that, you have to take a huge risk, buy the property, and then attempt to negotiate, at which point you've lost quite a bit of leverage. And especially for brand new investors, a lot of beginners, that's probably going to be out of your skill set, unless of course you're very, very risk tolerant. Let's look at a few of these properties here. We got this property right here. This is actually a kind of a acreage piece. I don't know exactly how big it is, but it looks like a few acres. Of course, there's no road that fronts this property. So, you've got a lot of potential landowners that adjoin the property you might be able to get access from, but as of right now, there's no legal access. The next one here is a little tiny square. So not only is it too small to build on, but you cannot even access that property because you don't have legal access. The next one, another small little piece of property, no legal access, does not front a road whatsoever. And let's see, the last one we got here, this little baby triangle, and it looks like it's in the middle of a bunch of very large pieces of land. So obviously you have 4 property owners you might be able to negotiate something with, but as it stands, you cannot access that property right now. And of course, I'm not even sure if it is going to be very usable or anything like that, depending on this size, because it's very difficult to tell when it comes to perception when you're comparing that property to the larger properties around it. Now, in addition to having legal access to a property where it fronts on a road, there's a side note that I want to mention here. You need to be cautious with properties that might have legal access on paper, which means they actually do front a road on paper or on a plat map, but they might not have physical access. So they front a platted road, but the road to that property was never built. And typically, the county or the city is not going to let you just go in there and cut out your own road to your property. So these can become extremely tricky as well. And both of these, and I'm going to pop on the screen right here, there's a property, let's see, 6910 and 6909, the ones that are shaded in red right now. These are prime examples of that. On the far left side of this photo, you can actually see what looks to be like a dirt road going up north and south. But those properties, the roads that they're supposed to front, obviously those roads were never cut. So you cannot even get to those properties. Even though you do have legal access, you do not have physical access. And things like GIS or plat map research, and of course drive-bys, if you can get to those properties, will help you determine if that property has legal and or physical access. Now again, those are just a few properties that I came across this morning doing some research, and I wanted to share them. Obviously, there are about another dozen or 24 types of properties that you likely want to avoid. These could include properties with some sort of reserved use. This is something I see all the time as well. I'm talking about things like green spaces, water retention areas, utility easements, utility occupied sites that house things such as water pumps and lift stations, drainage easements, ditches, green space areas, conservation areas, and lots of other similar properties. Now, these are all properties that have a very specific use that is reserved for them. So this might mean, regardless what you think you could or what you want to do with a property like that, odds are it will never happen. So, for example, if you happen to come across the only large parcel in the middle of a fully established subdivision, you better make sure you do lots and lots of research. It might be there because it is the subdivision's green space, or might have a conservation easement which limits your enjoyment to perhaps hiking and maybe bird watching or something, along of course with the residents of that subdivision who likely have an easement to utilize that property as well that you'll never be able to get rid of. And I see these properties all of the time, and people buy them and they get stuck with them because they realize they made a mistake. And of course, there's all sorts of other types of properties like condemned properties, properties with contamination issues, properties in condominium complexes with unbuilt units, and lots of other junk properties that exist. If you've watched my channel for any period of time, you know that I strongly emphasize the importance of learning how to properly research properties. Like mentioned earlier, it's very easy to overlook some of these things to the untrained eye. So take some time, learn what you're doing, and continue to refine your skills every single day. I truly hope this helps you out. For more information on the tax sale business, there are a whole bunch of links in today's video description, including one to taxsaleacademy.com. And while you're there, you can join the academy, or you can grab this book right here, Tax Sale Playbook. I would love to ship you a copy of the book. Just cover the nominal cost of shipping, which is less than $5. I'm going to send you an actual physical copy of that book, not a PDF or anything silly like that, an actual real book I want to mail from my warehouse to your front door. Again, that's taxsaleacademy.com. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.